Stress is huge. You can't underestimate it. We focus so much on the chemistry of it and go, okay, I'm eating, 2 grams of omega-3 oils, and I'm taking this drug and that drug, and then eating this food and that food. And yeah, that's part of it. And that those are they're things, they're real. But the larger portion, the elephant in the middle of the room that we don't like to talk about, is that stress thing.
Oh, hey, welcome to the Fixed Blood Sugar webinar. Dr. Saunders just hopped on. I was going to start and just share a couple things, but he came just in the nick of time. So this is good. Today we are talking about type 2 and how the Diabetes Solution Kit can work for you. So if you don't know what the Diabetes Solution Kit is, it's this beautiful little book right here. So you can also get this in a digital format. And if you want the hard copy, you can get that too. But you can find information about that at bartonwebinar.com. We are on episode number 206 today. And so I'm excited that you guys are here. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I can get this shared to Facebook. I had brought it up. There we go. Hello, all of you on YouTube. And now joining us on Facebook. We are excited that you are here. Feel free to comment in the comments. Those of you on Zoom, the Q&A is kind of the best place for us to manage those questions. And hello, Ryan. I didn't even see who else commented. I just saw that Ryan was on there. So you guys, it's going to be a good webinar today. I've been getting lots of questions from so many of you. A lot of you have joined our Facebook group, which is Barton Webinar. You can ask questions there, and a lot of people who are in that group will be able to answer them for you or tell you what has worked best for them. It is just this really great place for you to have a community while you're looking to reverse your type 2. And so I'd really encourage you to join that. It is a private group. I will have to accept you into it, but be sure to head there. If I can get the link for it, I will do that. In the meantime, let's welcome Dr. Scott Saunders.
Hey.
It's just Dr. Scott. Actually, you know what? I was going to ask this today because there was an email that is going out. What do most people call you? Dr. Saunders? Dr. Scott? What?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Dr. Saunders. Probably my patients all call me Dr. Saunders. Everyone else calls me Scott.
Yeah. Okay. That's kind of what I thought. But all right. I'm glad I asked. Okay. What do we have here? Rosalind is here. Connie is here from Ohio. Amanda from London. Awesome. We have Iman from Brazil. Hello. Tim is from California. I'm looking forward to getting started Friday with a purchase of supplements. Awesome. Judy's back. Let me see. Awesome. There's so many of you here. Chris is here. Carl's here. You guys, hello. Welcome. Scott has a lookalike to, oops, I missed it. It scrolled up. Scott was a lookalike to someone. I think it was, yeah, I don't know for sure. Let's see here. Okay, guys, I'm gonna just quick post this. Barton Webinar is kind of the hub where you're gonna want to get information. I'm also gonna share that if you use, I'm typing and talking, so this is very difficult for me. Code webinar25 will save you 25% on anything on that site. So that's supplements, that's the Diabetes Solution Kit. Go have fun, lots of good stuff. But before we even begin, I'm just going to quick mention this because I got probably 4 emails about this, which is very interesting. Dr. Saunders, people are wondering if they're starting the Diabetes Solution Kit or they're starting maybe the supplement Synachroma or berberine or any of the supplements that we may have. How soon can they get off their meds? Should they stop right away?
Oh, good question. No, don't stop right away. Do all of that stuff. Take the supplements, do phase 1, but you're going to measure your glucose. And as you're measuring your glucose and you start seeing it drop down, and a lot of people have attested to this. They say, okay, so I got down into the low 120s, and I called my doctor and said, look, my blood sugar is getting a little low. I'm a little worried about it. What medication can we stop? And so you work with your doctor on that as your blood sugar is dropping lower. And always use the I'm worried, I'm concerned idea, because otherwise the doctor's like, no, I'm in charge. You got to stay on it for the rest of your life. Didn't I tell you got to stay on it for the rest of your life? So, but if you say, I'm worried about and concerned about getting hypoglycemia, which medication can I stop? And then that usually works a lot better.
And won't that be fun to be able to go to the doctor and say, oh, my numbers are just getting so low?
Yeah, wouldn't that be fun?
That's a fun thing to get to do. So, and many of you on this webinar have been able to do that. And so that's kind of our goal, is to educate you guys, not me, Dr. Saunders, but I am learning a lot from him. So I'm getting close. I mean, I'm almost a doctor now. So I'm just kidding. But I just love the things that he's teaching. And
I'll give you an honorary doctorate degree.
Thank you. No problem. I know we're close, but it is fun from just learning about this and hearing from you guys, what is working for you, what's not. And everyone's a little bit different. And so with that, I just want to put a disclaimer out there that Dr. Saunders is not your personal doctor. So please do discuss any changes that you make with them before you implement the things that we talk about today. And every body is different. And so things that work for one person may not work for the other. In fact, we had someone hop on the webinar. We've talked about this a few times. He found that he had done the diabetes solution kit. He was, phase 2 plus, he was really, really doing great. And he would find that he could have half a glass of juice and his blood sugar numbers would not increase. But the next day he ate like the same exact foods and he had sugar-free gum and his numbers would skyrocket, which was very interesting. And so everyone is a little bit different. And I'm going to ask this too, guys, comment in the chat if you have a continuous glucose monitor, because I'm just curious where we're at with that as far as people getting that. I think it is such a cool thing to see the way that food impacts you immediately, right? Well, how long after you eat do your numbers shift, Dr. Saunders? How long does that really take?
It can be immediate. It depends on how your pancreas produces insulin. So some people have a lot of insulin resistance and their blood sugar just shoots up. They eat something like watermelon. Watermelon has a super high glycemic index. So, it just makes the blood sugar go up rather rapidly. And then if they eat something like ice cream, it doesn't go up. And they're like, oh, cool, I can eat ice cream. But eventually that'll catch up with you.
Yeah, I saw a video of someone trying different foods and raspberries were okay for them. And then they tried it with pineapple and they were like, oh my goodness, it was just unbelievable. So not all fruit is treated equally in this.
Tropical fruit tends to be a much higher glycemic index, all tropical fruits, as opposed to like berries don't have that issue. Yeah.
Okay. So quite a few, we got some yeses and nos on the continuous glucose monitor. People are asking, where can you get one? A lot of insurance, I don't think, are quite covering them for some people. I love, this person says, I use it mostly for tracking trends, especially when I'm sleeping. Very interesting. Mm-hmm. I know.
That's really cool.
A lot of videos where people are using them, and just seems like such a neat thing to have. So okay, this is what I want to do. So I think we have a lot of new people on, and I'm so excited for you guys because this is the beginning of your journey. And it's also a place where you can ask Dr. Saunders questions. I don't know of any other place where you can hop on and talk to a doctor for free. So with that, I want to talk a little bit, Dr. Saunders, about what type 2 is. What is happening in the body when someone gets a type 2 diagnosis? Now, we've done this before, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but just a general visual of what's happening in our bodies.
Okay. So think of it on a cellular level. A cellular meaning each cell is a separate individual. We think of our body as one body. But really we're made up of almost 100 trillion little cells that are each individual. They're doing their own thing. And they say, this is what I do. And they have all of their machinery inside. And this machinery is amazing. They have motors, they have cars, they have tracks that they run on. They move things around. They have dump trucks. They have, it's just like, this is like a whole city inside a cell that is its own separate individual. And so each cell is running in your body and requires a certain amount of course, energy. So, the Earth is like one planet, but if there's no sunshine coming in constantly, like all day long, every day, as the earth goes around, you're getting that sunshine on different parts of the earth. And wherever you don't get sunshine, well, you don't get growth, you don't get, and nothing functions, nothing works. So same kind of thing. Each one of your cells has to have a constant supply of energy coming in. And there are three sources of energy. You have fat and carbohydrate, which is sugar, glucose, and protein, which is amino acids. And so the cell can switch when there's not enough of one, the cell can use another one. Most cells, some cells like nerve cells in the brain, can only use glucose and ketone bodies, which is from fat. When you're burning fat for energy, one of the side effects or one of the leftovers from that is ketone bodies, ketones. And so if you've ever heard of the keto diet, you get phase one of our program is a ketogenic diet. And that's what you're doing. You're burning fat so that you make these ketones in your blood, and some of your brain cells and other cells in your body can run on those ketones. So that's kind of a partly using the fat. So I don't use it as a separate source of energy. So what happens is these cells, they like glucose. Glucose is like the awesome energy source because it's easy to use. It just goes right into the Krebs cycle, and it's popping out 34 ATPs for every time it goes around, and it's just awesome, and making a lot of oxygen-free radicals too, by the way. So if you have extra glucose, then the cell goes, oh, give me that, I'll store it. I'll store it for a rainy day. That way I don't have to use fat or protein. So the cells will store a certain amount of this glucose. So the glucose comes in, and then if you keep putting glucose, if you keep eating glucose and the glucose levels going up, then you're getting more and more and more and more glucose in the cell. And pretty soon the cell goes, whoa, we're done here. And so the nucleus of the cell stops making the glucose, the insulin receptor that brings the glucose into the cell. So if you don't have any insulin receptors, then what happens? The insulin comes along and says, oh, nothing to see here, move along. And then goes to another cell, oh, nothing to see here, move along. And so the blood sugar's going up, and your pancreas is going, hey, we got this blood sugar going up, we need to make more insulin. So it makes more insulin. And the insulin's going all over and looking for cells that need sugar, and there isn't any. What's that called? Insulin resistance. All these individual cells all over the place are going, no, I don't need any thanks. Okay, I don't need any thanks. And they're coming along in the bloodstream, all this insulin coming along and going, nothing here. But the pancreas, meanwhile, is reading this as, hey, there's too much glucose in your blood. And the only way the pancreas has to bring it down is to make insulin so that it can get more into the cells. Well, when it can't do that, then you get high insulin and high blood glucose. And so the high blood sugar is called diabetes. And that's because when you get high blood sugar, it spills into the urine and makes you urinate frequently. So the word diabetes means urinate frequently. So remember, there's another kind of diabetes called type 2 diabetes where you have low insulin, and that's the pancreas just doesn't work. So the pancreas doesn't work and there's no insulin to bring.
Type 1.
Type 1, right, type 1 diabetes, where you have, so the glucose can't get into the cells if you don't have insulin. So then what happens? Well, these cells are going, hey, I need more insulin. Got a bunch of insulin receptors out there, but there's no insulin because your pancreas isn't making it. So the glucose can't get into the cells. So what happens? The blood glucose goes up. So now you have two opposite problems. One with the pancreas doesn't work at all, and one with the pancreas is working too much, is putting out too much insulin. And both of them have one thing in common: blood sugar is high. So they're both called diabetes, but we distinguish them with type 1 and type 2. But in medical school, most doctors don't think of it that way. Most of the time they think, oh, high blood sugar, then we just need insulin to bring the blood sugar down. But what happens if you give somebody insulin who has type 2 and doesn't have any insulin receptors? The cells have no receptors to bring in. And then what happens? Well, the blood sugar just goes up and you get more insulin and more insulin. I had somebody on 200 units of insulin a day. And you guys, that's like more than 10 times what an average body makes. And it wasn't working, wasn't doing anything for her because there was no insulin receptors. So we have a program that's totally different from that. It's not increasing insulin. You know those drugs you're taking? That most of them, not metformin, most of the other ones cause you to make more insulin. That's how they work. Or some people are injecting insulin. That's how it works. But so there may be some individual cells in different places that go, yeah, I'll take in a little more sugar, but it's not a long-term solution. You can see how that's a dead end. So what we have is entirely different. What it does is you stop eating glucose, just stop. So you have this phase 1 program, you're eating 20 grams of carbs a day, and that's not enough glucose to run your body on. So what happens? Well, the cells start using what they got. Hey, I got all this extra insulin, extra glucose. I'll just use that for energy. So the cells use that for energy. And after a while, they run out of glucose and they go, oh, I have to use fat for energy. So they start using fat. So you start losing weight, even though you're eating fat, but you're also, it can start burning the fat you eat too. So then when there's not any more glucose there and you're burning fat, then that turns on the nucleus to start making insulin receptors. So now you become insulin sensitive. So it completely reverses the problem of type 2 diabetes. And that's what we do. That's why it happens. That's what we do.
I'm getting a bunch of questions. Is there any relation to the liver, the adrenal glands, or the thyroid at all in this type 2?
Okay. Liver, yes. Liver does a lot of storing of glucose. And if you overpack the liver with glucose, you start getting fatty liver disease. And the fatty liver is the cells are dying and all that glucose is being made into fat. And so the liver fills up with fat. That's actually not a good thing, by the way. So you don't want that. And the thyroid, has a kind of a minor role to play in that the thyroid is kind of responsible for your metabolism, your general metabolism. So if your metabolism is kind of low, then you burn less sugar, less glucose. So you need more exercise, that's all. And what was the other one? The liver, the thyroid?
Adrenals.
The adrenals. Oh, yeah. You know what? Adrenals are huge, and they're kind of peripheral, but they're huge because the adrenal output is cortisol, and cortisol makes you resistant to insulin. So you have these insulin receptors are on the cells, and the cortisol comes along and blocks them all up, saying, no, you can't use that. And then so the cells can't bring in sugar in, even though they have insulin receptors, cortisol blocks them. So the problem with that is you could eat and your blood sugar goes way up, and you have plenty of room in your cells. You're not toxic. Your cells aren't packed with sugar that they're getting toxic. They're just waiting, but the stress blocks them, so they can't get sugar in. So yeah, that's huge. The stress, the adrenals especially, that's big.
You've shared this before, but maybe you can share with us the impact that stress itself has had on people reversing disease.
Yeah. Okay. Sometimes stress is like the whole thing. Like the one woman I shared before, Julie had her blood sugar was uncontrollable. And I thought it was just because she's drinking soda pop and, not taking care of herself. She's really overweight and not losing weight, and she's not on a diet. And so she was on a lot of insulin and 4 medications and still wasn't in good control. And then one day she called and she was like hypoglycemic. She was fatigued and weak and didn't feel good. And I'm like, you got to stop all the drugs. Don't take insulin, because she got hypoglycemic, low blood sugar. And that can be dangerous. Your brain doesn't work when it doesn't get when there's no blood sugar, right? That's really important. So she kept a log of her blood sugar and came in and showed normal, like across the board normal. So she's uncontrollably high. And then in one day, boom, drops to normal. And it took us a long time to figure this out. But her daughter moved out of the house. When her daughter was living in the house, they were fighting constantly. And her daughter was running away from home and is like, oh, my daughter. So this constant like battle and problems, this stress was causing her diabetes. And as soon as the stress went away, her daughter moved out and they became best friends. It's like, hi, Mom, how you doing? All of a sudden, that's kind of the way it works. When you're living together, there's a lot of tension. And when you're not, all of a sudden you're best friends. So her stress disappeared overnight and her diabetes disappeared overnight. She got off all her medications and never needed another medication again. She didn't have diabetes and it was just purely stress induced.
Wow. I've been seeing some videos and some people talking about this on social media, that the state that your mind is in when you eat can also affect the way the food works in your body. And in fact, they were showing some tests where they were giving not healthy food to an animal. I feel like it was a rabbit, but I'm not really sure.
Rabbit.
And they would give one group of rabbits this food, this bad food, and they would get really, really sick. And then they give another group of rabbits this food. But when they fed them, they would like pet them and talk nice to them and do all of this. And it completely changed. They could tolerate the food and it didn't affect them. But the ones that weren't getting that affection got sick. And I just find that very interesting. I think it's just something that I'm really interested in right now too. But it's really stress.
Yeah, stress is huge. You can't underestimate it. We focus so much on the chemistry of it and go, okay, I'm eating, 2 grams of omega-3 oils and I'm taking this drug and that drug and then eating this food and that food. And yeah, that's part of it. And those are they're things, they're real. Yeah. But the larger portion, the elephant in the middle of the room that we don't like to talk about is that stress thing.
You almost wonder if you just can't even absorb the good stuff if you're mentally not in a good spot. So very interesting. Okay. Lots of questions, you guys. This is great. You know what? We did have a question in our Facebook group. Someone was asking what your thoughts are on milk. Someone had found a low carb milk and how you feel about that in like phase 1 of the solution kit. Is that something that people can do?
Yes. Okay. So that's the beauty of this system, this phase 1 system, is while you're doing that ketogenic diet, as long as you stick to your 20 grams, you're okay. So if you get this low carb milk, because what they do is they pre-digest that lactose, the sugar, the milk sugar in it. And so they must take it out. Anyway, so
how do they do that? It sounds funny when you say they pre-digest it.
Well, they pre-digest it. They put lactase in it, which is an enzyme that breaks apart the glucose and galactose. But it's still going to have the glucose in it unless they get that out somehow. Anyway, I'm not familiar with how that happens. But anyway, so just it'll tell you right on the label how much carbs and how much sugars and just make sure you stay under your 20 grams.
Someone had asked one time, okay, can I have a piece of bread while I love this kind of bread. Can I have this piece of bread while I'm doing the solution kit? And like Dr. Saunders has said, yeah, you can. It just might be all of your carbs for the entire day, right? So if you just want a piece of bread for the day, you can do that. But just like he said, just really, we get a lot of questions, but the key is really learning how to figure out your net carbs. And so maybe we should go over that again, because I know we get a lot of questions about that. The goal is to have 20 grams or less net carbs per day when you're in phase 1 of the diabetes solution kit. And what is a net carb, Dr. Saunders?
So the net carb, fiber is carbohydrate. So if you think of like pectin in apples, is a carbohydrate. So that counts as carbs. So if you look at an apple, it's pretty close to 100% carbs. But if you remove the fiber, the stuff that we don't use for energy, and you just look at the net carbs, which is the sugar, the part that's made into glucose that can be used for energy. So that includes sugars and starches. That's the net carbs. The fiber is taken out. So it'll say total carbs, fiber, and you subtract that from that, and you end up with the net carbs.
Perfect. All right. The Garcias are on, and they have had so much success with the diabetes solution kit, but they said, hello all, we fired our original doctor when he could not believe the numbers we had. He was extremely resistant in reducing our meds. Forget taking them away. Our new doctor works well with us. So their numbers had gotten so low from doing the system that he still didn't think that they should come off of them. And so I think the important thing to hear in that is that they took their health into their own hands. And that's what Dr. Saunders recommends you do too. It's your body, just make sure that you know what you're doing, I guess, right?
Yeah,
but congratulations, Garcias.
I'm reading a book about they're discussing cancer and how cancer is related to the personality types. And they said, one amazing thing, if you read books or studies on how people get cured from cancer, one of the things that's found is they take their life into their own hands, and they say, okay, I'm going to be responsible for what happens to me, and I'm going to decide what I do. And they're the ones that get cured. The ones that do everything the doctor says they're nice and the doctor likes them, but they don't have these miraculous cures as often as people who do take their health into their own hands. Yeah. And I think diabetes has to be the same way too. You have to decide, okay, I'm not going to give control over to somebody else. I'm going to actually learn how to do this and do it.
Yes. Awesome. Okay. Carl says, this morning I took my fasting glucose level shortly after I got up. It was 93.4. 20 minutes later, 97.2. And an hour later, it was 117.3. All this before I ate anything, drank anything, or took my meds and supplements. I'm about to start phase 1 of the program. 2 questions. When is the best time to take my fasting glucose? And should I stop taking all of these drugs in order to get a glucose reading without meds and supplements?
Okay, so those numbers, those 3 numbers that you gave, after waking up, as you wake up in the morning, what happens is you release a bunch of cortisol that makes you insulin resistant. And at the same time, if your blood sugar's been dropping down because you don't have anything in your stomach, your liver is pumping sugar into the blood, but your cells aren't getting that because now you're insulin resistant because your cortisol just went up. So that's the morning effect or the sunrise effect. And that's okay. But if you look at all of those numbers, they're kind of within the standard of the 10% that you expect from the glucose monitor itself. So especially the CGMs, they're not that accurate. So you kind of have to take the number with a grain of salt and not look at that number as an accurate, it's, 102.2, this is like really accurate. It's not. It's kind of look at it as a 10% both ways. So out of 100, if it's 110 or 90, that's kind of the same number. So don't take that as absolute. Yeah, your blood sugar glucose probably did go up from the time you woke up to before you ate breakfast, hour later. But that's okay. Yeah, that's normal.
Really good question here. So first, Tim says, I hit 100 and my doctor took me off of metformin. So that is awesome. And then I love his next question because I think it's kind of something that everyone really wants to know. He said, will I be able to have a slice of apple pie or are those days gone?
Okay. We have phase 2 and then we have phase 3. So the way to look at it is if you don't have insulin resistance and you eat apple pie, your blood glucose is not going to shoot up and it's not going to be an issue. If you start eating it every day and make an exception every day, then you're going, it's going to come back, and And I think it was Vila and Barbie what they were saying. Yeah, we did really great at first, and then we went into phase 2 and started eating things that we shouldn't eat, and we had to go back to phase 1, right? So, and you know what? To tell you the truth, the research shows that's not a problem. That if you go into phase 2 and you get insulin resistance again, your blood sugar goes up, and you enjoy your apple pie every day, then what? Well, just go back into phase 1 at some point and get your insulin sensitivity back again. It's okay. That's actually not a problem.
Yeah. This is really interesting, guys. I mentioned this at the beginning, but Rosalind said, I have a monitor, but I'm not wearing one continuously. And I want to thank you guys for mentioning the gum issue. I was chewing more than usual. I had to consider what you said about gum. I stopped eating one particular one, and my morning readings went from 225 to 143 in 1 week.
Wow. Wow. That's a big difference.
It is a big difference. And, we talk about that a lot. And in fact, I haven't read through all these questions, but usually we get a few questions about sweeteners. And that's why we mentioned the gum, is because sometimes, well, Dr. Saunders, why is that? Why would someone respond to a sugar-free gum like that?
So yeah, there's no glucose, there's no sugar, it can't raise your blood sugar because you get more insulin resistant. And that's what was seen with when they did first study in the 1970s. They were looking at people with diabetes drinking Diet Coke versus regular Coke. And the Diet Coke people had higher blood glucose readings than the people on the regular Coke. And that has calories and that one doesn't. It didn't make any sense. So they didn't publish the study because it didn't make any sense to them. So what happens is the sweeteners in the diet drink cause a release of insulin, but there's no sugar there. And you get more insulin resistance from those diet drinks than you do from regular drinks. And I imagine gum too. Yeah, same thing.
Jan said, Synochroma has been a blessing to me. I have used it for some time. When I last saw my doctor, she told me I could go off of metformin. Okay, we've had 2 people go off their metformin. This is amazing already.
In one day.
I'm only like 14 minutes into the questions in here, so this is good. I had already decreased it quite a bit. I have lost a lot of weight over the last few years. Going off metformin is worth everything. It does bad things to you. Yeah. So congratulations, Jan. That is amazing.
Yeah, good work.
Yes. And I'd be curious to know, were you only using Synochroma, or were you using the diabetes solution kit as well? Just curious. Okay, let me see where I'm at with these questions. Hi, this is Gail. I'm insulin resistant and I'm on Victoza. I've worked up to 1.8 injection daily. This is for weight loss. I have added berberine 3 times a day. Is this okay, or should I add something else?
No, the berberine's fine. Yeah, there's nothing else you have to add, as long as you're maintaining your blood sugar. The berberine is not going to drop your blood sugar too low. That's the advantage of it. It's not like it doesn't increase insulin levels. It works in a different way by telling your body to burn fat. So I think with the Victoza injections, adding berberine is a really good idea. I know your doctor would never tell you that, but and the reason is because it impedes the cyclic AMP and tells your body, hey, start burning fat for energy. And that's what you want, to lose weight. You don't want to start using muscles for energy. You want to use fat. And so the berberine is going to kind of guide your body into burning fat for energy. So I think that's a good way to go.
Wonderful. This is funny, guys. Iman said, my doctor said I can stop taking metformin as my last A1C was 5.8. I'm still taking berberine. Then I got a call from my pharmacist that I get blood clots. So I'm in increased cholesterol and triglycerides. Then I got a call from my pharmacist that I get blood clots, must have increased cholesterol and triglycerides. Any comments?
Must have increased cholesterol and triglycerides. If you have increased cholesterol and triglycerides, I don't know what that would have to do with blood clots. Getting blood clots is usually an inflammatory process, and it would have more to do with like the omega-6 if you have high omega-6 oils, you tend to get blood clots more easily because you tend to have inflammation more, or other inflammatory. So I don't think the cholesterol is related to that.
Okay, let's see. This is funny. It's not funny, but Connie said, so many times during my diabetic journey, I really crave something very cold, meaning I turn to sugar-free popsicles. Now, I'm probably assuming that this is a no-no because of the sweetness. Does anyone out there know of anything I could substitute to get that very cold craving? I tried ice cubes, but broke my tooth.
Oh,
that's not funny. Yes, that would hurt. You know, there are a lot of people though that do that little nugget ice. I wonder if you could do that. I don't know if that would break teeth, but that'd be an option. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, consider cold cravings. The reason people get cold cravings is because they're dehydrated. And it could be a relative dehydration. So if you have a lack of potassium or sodium, like not enough salt, then your blood volume isn't enough. And the cold cravings, and the reason for the cold cravings is, this is really interesting. When you're warm, you dilate your blood vessels and you need more water, more fluid in your blood. And so people tend to get thirsty when those blood vessels are dilated, and they get a dry mouth and get thirsty. And so you drink water, you drink a small amount of water, like 1 cup of water that's really cold, and it will cool down and the part of the brainstem right in the back of your throat, it'll cool it down. You've heard of brain freeze, right? And that relieves the thirst right away. And so you actually get sort of a dopamine rush from the cold. And so that's where the cravings come from. So if you drink like room temperature water instead, then you don't get that cold rush to your brain. And you can actually drink more water and get fully hydrated. Whereas, a small amount of very cold water will cool down your brain. And then if you drink warm water, I've actually had friends, I know people that drink warm water. They just always drink warm water.
Interesting. Okay, very cool. See, we're learning all these new things, guys. This is good.
Yeah, a cold beer, right?
Yeah, yes. Mark is asking if there's an alternative to Prilosec.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So Prilosec has been approved by the FDA for 2 weeks. A lot of people use it for years and years, and now that it's over the counter, it's easy to get. Well, there are problems with it. It prevents you from absorbing divalent cations, which means magnesium, calcium, zinc, selenium, and copper. And so you can get deficient in divalent cations from that. The other thing it does is it blocks your parietal cells from making intrinsic factors, so you can't absorb vitamin B12. So because of these issues, people who take it long term might want to try something else. And a better thing to do is to get the Barton Publishing GERD kit, solution kit. And what that does is it's a whole little booklet on how to deal with your acid reflux so that you don't need any medications at all. No Tums, no Prilosec, no Zantac, no Tagamet, none of those, because dealing with the problem is really the way to go rather than taking a medication for the symptom.
All right. Let's see. Another question here about B12. So Roy says, when I start feeling foggy in my thinking, will a sublingual B12 supplement help clear up the fog?
Okay, that's a great question. So I want everybody to listen to this. This is real. I give B12 injections to a lot of people, and what I find is that some people respond very well. They're like, "Wow, that made a difference." If you're deficient, it makes a difference, and it's great, and it'll clear up the fog. You'll go, "Wow, I'm sleeping better. I'm clearer. I have more energy. I can actually physically do things I couldn't do before." So if you're deficient or you have inadequate B12, then yes, taking a supplement will make a difference. If not, it won't make a difference. So that's how to look at that, the B12 thing. Now, the sublingual B12, let's look at the reality of B12, and that is the cobalamin molecule is a huge molecule made by bacteria. It holds, anyway, it's the B12 is called cobalamin. That's what it is. So this big molecule is not absorbed through membranes very well. So it doesn't go through your skin. So they have like B12 that you can rub on a cream, that you get a little bit tiny microgram quantities. And then sublingual, you think you can bypass the intestines. Nah, that's not what happens. The sublingual, it doesn't get absorbed under your tongue. It just goes out and you swallow it down, and it goes back to, there is one place you can absorb it, and that is in the terminal ileum. It's the very end of your small intestine. You can absorb vitamin B12. You got 18 inches that you can absorb B12. Why? Because there's sensors there that go, I taste B12. That means, and I need B12. So then there's the ability to absorb it will bind something called intrinsic factor that comes from your stomach. So if you're not making intrinsic factor because you're taking Prilosec, you're not going to absorb vitamin B12, even if you are in those terminal ileum. You have to have the intrinsic factor also to bind the B12 so that it can be absorbed. So then here's the cool thing. The intestines right in that area, it'll push it through, push it back and forth and back and forth until those sensors go, I don't taste any B12 anymore. And then it'll just move it on down. So B12 is one of those things that it's kind of hard to absorb. You have to have a lot of working parts. And if one of those parts is not working, then you don't get it. So it's a common deficiency. So sometimes the sublingual, which you just swallow down and absorb in your intestines anyway, or the cream or whatever, they might make a small difference or something, but sometimes they don't, and you have to have an injection. So that's why a lot of times I'll just test people out to try an injection, and if they go, oh my gosh, it cleared up everything, and I've occasionally had it. In fact, I had one. This is one of those cases that you go, wow. He had schizophrenia. He was a young man, in his 20s, and hallucinations and paranoia. And his mom brought him in, and he didn't want to come in. And I said, let's just try a B12 shot. And she came back and she said, he's better. Give him another B12 shot. He's better. Give him another B12 shot. And he cleared up his schizophrenia completely, like he's a normal kid. So here's a kid that has schizophrenia. He's on disability, like permanent disability for schizophrenia, and he's completely cured now. So he doesn't know what to do.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, really weird.
That is amazing. Very cool. I just was going to comment on here. I just saw a message from Butch, who I've gotten to chat with. He is coming to us live, not live. Well, he's joining our live on Facebook from an Alaskan cruise. Is it downtime on the cruise, Butch, right now? Or, that is dedication. Good for you.
Hey, we should do a cruise. We should do a cruise. We should do the diabetes webinar cruise or something.
Oh my gosh, that would be so fun. Hey, all right, comment. We'll let Joe know if he needs to get that going. Okay. This is a really good question from Kathy on Facebook. When does a blood glucose level become dangerous?
When it's lower than probably in the 40s, when people get into the 50s, they're going to notice it, but dangerous is in the 30s and 20s. Okay. People go into a coma in the 20s, so that's really low. Or when it's really high, and I've seen like 800s and 900s, and they're usually okay. Get over 1,000 and you can go to a diabetic coma from that too. So you kind of have these really extreme from the 20s where you can go into a coma, and then the 1,000 plus.
Wow. Okay. It's good to know.
And it's interesting, the 1,000 plus, when it's super high, the problem is not the blood glucose. It's that your blood is too thick, the osmotic pressure. So it's kind of like when you don't have enough sodium, it's the osmotic pressure is the problem.
Wow. Okay, great questions, guys. Tim says, how about a guy that wants to gain weight? I was 150 and now I'm down to 135 because I stopped eating hamburgers and stuff and my blood sugar is at 92.
Oh, normal blood sugar, and you want to gain weight? Okay, there's ways to gain weight. Now, you have to have insulin to gain weight. And so one of the things that I would recommend is, this is what I do when I have patients that want to gain weight, is I test them for insulin, because I had someone, for example, and she'd lost weight and her family had diabetes, like type 2, and she was worried about it. So we did the insulin, C-peptide, hemoglobin A1C, and glucose. So we did all 4 of them and found out that her blood sugars are okay. They're a little on the high side. Her hemoglobin A1C is 5.6, so it's okay, just a little on the high side of normal. But her insulin production is low. So she's like, her insulin level was 2 and her C-peptide level was less than 1. So she has not very much insulin. So she's not going to gain weight very easily. It's going to be really hard to gain weight for someone who doesn't make very much insulin. So if you want to gain weight, you may have to increase the insulin, and that may mean like chewing sugar-free gum,
Yeah,
and all those things, or eating frequently, or eating more frequent meals, kind of thing. That's a good way to gain weight.
Valerie said, I still prick my fingers. I tried to test more than once to see if there was a difference in numbers. And yes, all the numbers are different, sometimes by 6. Yeah. And then she'd said, how come? But we kind of talked about that a little bit too.
Yeah. The machines are within 10 to 20%. So you think about that. So if your blood glucose is 100, then 80 or 90 could be on your machine, or 110 or 120 could be on your machine. Your actual number is 100, or from 90 to 110. Yeah, so anywhere in there could be. Your machine could show any number in there, and that's still within the parameters of the expected results of the machine.
Okay, Connie said, recently had back surgery to relieve some pinched nerves and couldn't take the Ozempic that I was prescribed. So during my stay at the hospital, they gave me insulin shots, but I noticed that they didn't bring my glucose levels down. Why didn't they work?
We started off with every cell is an individual cell, and each one decides how many insulin receptors they're going to make. And when all of your cells are filled up with sugar, they stop making insulin receptors. And so adding insulin doesn't help if you don't have insulin receptors, right? If those cells don't have insulin, you're not bringing any sugar into that cell. I don't care how much insulin you have. So the insulin resistance is a big problem. And so they add insulin. Well, Ozempic works in 2 ways. It tricks your body into making more insulin. That's one of the things. And the other thing is, it makes you nauseated or slows down your stomach emptying, so you don't feel like eating. So, so that's why you lose weight. But the problem with Ozempic, and we discussed this last time, is that because it increases the insulin, you actually have more insulin resistance as you lose weight, instead of, like on our program, you're increasing your insulin resistance because you're using up the glucose inside the cells. That's the difference.
Okay. There's a lot of interesting questions in here, but let me just see here. Someone had said, we talked a little bit about the adrenal glands, and someone said, what are the best tests to see if that is the root cause of some of your issues?
Yeah, adrenal tests aren't that easy. You can do it, a simple blood test, sort of a screening test, is to look at the cortisol and DHEA. And the way I look at that is you look at the cortisol to DHEA ratio. Sometimes the cortisol is going to be elevated. At our lab, it's around 20. it's over 20, that's kind of elevated, and between 10 and 20 is normal. Less than 10 is a little on the low side. So other labs will have somewhat different numbers. But then if you look at the cortisol to DHEA ratio, that those should indicate an adequate level of DHEA. Otherwise, you're catabolic. And that's sort of the idea, is not that your adrenal glands aren't functioning. It's that they're functioning and you're catabolic, which means you're making more cortisol and less DHEA than you should.
Okay, we've had a couple questions about berberine. And so I'm going to show you the website, bartonnutrition.com. I'm going to show you what our berberine looks like. A question came in from Johanna. Can you take berberine and metformin at the same time? Or do I need to get off one before the other? What works best?
You can take them at the same time, but you don't need to. If you're going to take berberine, you could just stop metformin. They won't interact, and they're not going to lower your blood sugar too much. Your glucose will not drop into the low range because of these, either berberine and or metformin.
Okay, this is bartonnutrition.com, you guys. Here's our berberine product. We have done webinars on this, and you can find a lot of information about the amazing benefits of berberine. But if you use code webinar25, you'll save 25% on berberine. So bartonnutrition.com. Of course, all of our other products are here as well, but I just wanted to show you what that looks like. And then Willa said, how many should I start with per day of the berberine?
Good question. So berberine is fairly short acting. So it's a good idea to take it 2 to 3 times a day. So start off with 500 milligrams twice a day. You can go up to 3 times a day. And monitor your blood sugar and see how you're doing.
Okay, perfect. Okay, someone is wondering, what is the best self-help cure for gallstones without having to remove it?
Okay, that's a difficult problem. You actually can dissolve gallstones. That's a thing. And there are some medications that your doctor can prescribe that will have some effect on that. And so it depends on how big the gallstones are, how many you have, and how much in danger you are of getting them stuck in your bile ducts and blocking off your liver, so your liver can't get the bile out, so your eyeballs turn yellow and all that. So that's where you have to work with your doctor, but there are ways to do that. There's the medication ways, and then there's the natural ways of doing it. And the natural ways of doing it are to have a lot of omega-3 oils, and then have a very high fiber diet. So avoid omega-6 oils, have more omega-3 and a very high fiber diet. And that means don't eat anything that doesn't have fiber in it. So for example, cheese has no fiber in it, eggs have no fiber, meat, essentially no fiber. They do have some protein fiber with it. So you avoid anything that doesn't have fiber. And so what you're doing then is all of the primary bile acids that make gallstones are being taken out, so they don't get recycled, because the secondary bile acids are what makes the gallstones. So you're getting rid of all those so you don't make any more, and allowing what's there to be reabsorbed and used up.
The Garcia say that they use frozen berries, but they're in phase 3. And as Dr. Saunders said, we go between phases all the way back to phase 1 for a spell if needed. Listening to Dr. Saunders and the team is and was the best thing we did. If we can do it, anyone can. Love it. Okay, Carl says, does Nexium block B12?
Yes. Nexium, it blocks the cells that make the acid. Those same cells also make intrinsic factors so that you can absorb B12. And so with that, you can take B12, but if you don't have intrinsic factor, you won't absorb it.
Rosalind said, Dr. Saunders, I've been doing a lot of fasting for 2 weeks, just eating 1 meal a day. I didn't realize how weak my body had gotten. I checked my blood pressure when I got home from church and it was 133/56. Is that good or bad? Started drinking a lot of water and then went into intermittent fasting instead of just 1 meal. I was enjoying the 1 meal. One of my doctors said, do you know that you're losing a lot of weight? I just didn't tell him what I was doing.
Huh. Well, I mean, if you're losing weight on purpose, that's good. If you want to if you want to do 1 meal a day and not get, weakness in your muscles, make sure you exercise. That's really important. During fasting, people think that they have to lay around when they're fasting, but that's not good for you. Actually, if you are fasting and you're not exercising, then you will tend to use protein, your muscle proteins, for energy because you're not eating anything. So it's kind of important to exercise while you're doing that so that your body will tend to use more fat and less protein for energy.
Okay. Mark said, actually, I'll ask that here at the end. 1 second. Okay. And then she had also mentioned her blood pressure was 133/56.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So yes, that's low. And if you're getting dizziness from the blood pressure being that low, then that's something that you need to do something about. If your blood pressure is getting that low, the question is why. Consider salt. You may be drinking too much water. You don't have enough salt. Both of those can cause the hypotension, low blood pressure, especially if you notice it like when you're standing up, like you're laying down or sitting down and you stand up and you get dizzy and have to hold on to something. That is a sign of dehydration, of not having enough either salt or water, or drinking too much water and depleting your salt. That can do the same thing. So getting more salt in your diet is a good idea.
Okay. Time is up for us today. Dr. Saunders, thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow on the Healthy Art webinar.
All right.
All right. So guys, we have 2 webinars that we do each week. This webinar, which is primarily focused on type 2. And then tomorrow at 12 noon Central, we do another webinar focused on a healthy heart. And so you can register for those at bartonwebinar.com. They're both free. Dr. Saunders is there to answer your questions and do teaching just like he did on this webinar. And so 2 opportunities in the week to just kind of get a break and learn about better ways to take care of your health, right? And as you know, often we don't just stick to one topic all the time. There are a lot of things that come up. So please join us tomorrow. Tell a friend. bartonwebinar.com is where you can register for that. Someone had commented in here that the Barton Nutrition site took them to Amazon, and that is really confusing to me. So I'm wondering maybe if you typed in the www before it, if that would help. I am not sure. That's so strange because I just go and I type in bartonnutrition.com and it takes me right to our site. So, or you can do store Barton Nutrition, maybe. Is that right? I'm trying here. No, don't go to that. Well, yeah, you can. I guess that would list all of our supplements as well, but it just doesn't look the same. Barton Nutrition is still where you want to go. So see, and Ryan, but that's different, right? Doesn't it look different? I mean, it does, but it'll work. Should take you to the same links, I'm assuming. I think, let me look at this. Yeah, it will take you to the same things. So perfect. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, what else can I answer before we hop off here? Okay, Willow had asked how many capsules of Cinechroma and the turmeric. Honestly, if you look at the bottle, it will tell you. I'm on the store page right now on Cinechroma, and it says to take 1. So in that 1 Cinechroma, you're getting 5,000 IUs of vitamin D3 per day, which is what Dr. Saunders recommends for vitamin D as well. So it's a really, really good option. I know some people do it twice a day, but 1 is recommended. And then I think there was another question about how much turmeric, and our turmeric BP product. That is another great product as well. That one is 1 capsule per day. Okay. Anything else? I think someone had mentioned, yes, Larry had mentioned that he's gotten rid of most of his most of his sweeteners, but is still using stevia. And that's kind of the beauty of the diabetes solution kit, is that you're going to see what works best for you. So you may not respond to stevia. It might be fine for you. It's just recommended that, especially in phase 1, that you try to get rid of anything sweet. As you move into phase 2, you'll notice how different sweeteners may affect you. And so that's kind of the goal, is to get to this place where you're very familiar with your body, and you'll feel how it will change if you're eating something maybe that your body doesn't love. All right, anything else here? I'm not sure about that. We might have to ask the rest of these on our next webinar. Have you all ever thought about having an open forum for a program? We've thought of lots of ideas. We've thought of lots of things. I don't know for sure where it'll go or what we'll do, but it's been really good so far. So we've had a lot of people that have been like, you guys should be charging for this. And yeah, we could, but right now we aren't, right? Okay, anything else? Awesome. So many kind words. You guys are the best. Thanks so much, guys. Would berberine help someone with type 1? That I don't know for sure. But one thing that I would say is, if you want to go back to some of our webinars, you'll find a link to our YouTube channel at bartonwebinar.com, and you can type in berberine when you get to our YouTube channel. And I think you'll find a lot of information. It is becoming, Dr. Saunders is just doing more and more research on berberine and how it's just really phenomenal. Anti-aging, people are loving it. Of course, blood sugar regulation, just a lot of benefits that it's almost like, I don't know who shouldn't take it, So I don't know specifically for type 1, but it'd be a good question to ask Dr. Saunders next week. So anything else? Okay. If you're curious about our other products, probably the best place to go. Let me see here. Actually, can you get it at the store? I don't know if you're still on, Ryan. Like, if someone wanted to see a list of all of our products, like our solution kits, I almost wanted to say the store page, but yeah, I can't do it on this one. Okay, so it is the store page that'll take us to all of those. So store.bartonpublishing.com /shop. If you click that link that Ryan Kelly posted in the chat, it'll take you to a lot of our products. I think that's what you were asking about, Mark. But we have a lot of other products outside of type 2 focus. So yeah. Perfect. Okay, you guys, thanks so much for being here. Come back either tomorrow or next week. And you can do this, guys. Keep up the hard work. You're doing the hard stuff, but in the big picture, the grand scheme of things, the work that you're doing isn't that hard, because it's so worth it. It's so worth it to feel good and get your body healthy. Okay. Yes, the acid reflux solution kit. Perfect. All right, guys, have a wonderful day. We will see you soon. Bye-bye.